Sup everybody, this is Karak with ACG, and it's my continuing mission to explore strange new games, to seek out new titles and new experiences, and then to boldly give you reviews that aren't 2 minutes long or filled with sponsored bullcrap. Today's title is Syndrome, a sci-fi horror game from the fine folks at Camel 101. In Syndrome, you're stuck inside a doomed spaceship, brought out of cryosleep, and roughly sent off to find out what happened. Let's see how Syndrome did, shall we? It's currently out on Steam for the unique price of $21.24 US. So here's my review for Syndrome. Bad guy sneaking moments, winded protagonists, and spaceship building, the Crib Notes edition. Graphics are up first. First things first, at times Syndrome does actually exude a shocking amount of atmosphere, like the mysteriously dark-filled walkways with the possible nefarious and pretending to be asleep robot drones, or strangely moving things just far out into the shadows enough that it's actually hard to see them. Unfortunately, other than that, the game actually does not have that much. Now, first, while repetition is something I can get accustomed to in titles, held aloft especially by other interesting designs elsewhere, it's really when repetition meets uninspired and paints a picture of the universe's most boring and ill-designed spaceship of all time that is impossible to escape the drudgery. This is literally the Jenga of spaceships. While rooms and locations make little logical sense already, it's the poor design that goes into them and into the creation of this game that is really so surprising. Textures are terrible, some appearing so blurry that you begin to wonder if your character is just crying right along beside you. Shadows work sometimes, and then other times glitch and dance and air out, resulting in the one thing that they designed right in the title, which is light and dark, occasionally appearing more like light and somewhat light, or dark and whoops, not actually that dark. Now, everything from the weapons to the locations to the wires on the floor just don't elicit a feeling of modern-day game design. While enemies look okay, sometimes skewing a bit on the freshly skinned because that would be scary kind of side, not really showing any real design points that could interest a gamer is a failure here. One aspect of horror games that are almost universally recognized as important is enemy design, from the crazy abomination-looking suckers in Dead Space to the ancient but venerable alien in the Alien games. Here, you really don't have any of that. While there are some special effects here and there, the game just gives off a feeling of block-like building basics where nothing was really paid special attention to. Also, most of the animations throughout the title are poor, and the first time you take an obviously horrifically obese main character into the throes of a surprise battle you have no chance to escape from, you basically get to see the equivalent of two dudes who've never fought, who were also blind from birth, trying to kill each other. As a package, I'd say average to poor. Sound, music, and voice.
Audio transmission.
Officer Gallen, can you hear me? My name is James Marco, Technical Assistant 2nd Class. You can call me Jimmy. I know you were contacted by Neo.
And of course, sound is up first, and actually it's pretty good with an emphasis on simple environmental effects and sounds mixed together, so you get this nice combination of echo and reverb across everything from the strangely dragging feet of unique enemies to your own bootsteps as you try to find keycard 723. Also, I really liked a lot of the creature sounds, and there's a good amount of variability there, so there's some uniqueness to each encounter. Music. So this is really the typical environmental horror sci-fi throb that you would all expect. Sometimes complete silence greets your entry into a new location, and other times there's this odd, out-of-tune, warbly music in the background. While it does know how to get out of the way, sometimes it feels like the game and the music is more scared than you would ever be, rarely really showing up to full frontal effect. And certainly, minimalistic is one thing, but I would have liked a bit more of an undercurrent for some atmosphere building, especially in particular locations in the game. Also, there's not a lot of variation here, with most of the instruments being the typical synths you would expect. Voice. So this is purely phoned in stuff, people, from the characters constantly battling it out for you to believe them over the radio to your own stilted voiceovers. Most of it lacks any real emotional resonance with the locations and the occurrences happening at that time as well. Now, the game is better with voice being there, but not much better. Gameplay. So really, you start out pretty quickly being told in a 1-2-3 way that you need to start investigating the ship and what's happened before a scary thing happens in the future. What follows is many hours of traveling through the ship, and I swear sometimes it feels like devs all went to the same writing class 101, and instead of listening, they just bought the crib notes off of anyone else selling them. To do this game, you end up traveling through the ship and solving little location-based puzzles, investigating and hacking computers for data, and sometimes going up against the enemies in the game. Now, while you can get some impromptu weapons in the title, you can also hide in and use stealth, but that doesn't really come until a little bit later, which means if you're like me and say, boom, it says stealth in the title, I'm going to try it right away, you only find out that the game just sends bad guys to you by spawning them right outside doorways or 10 feet down a corridor. For a while in the game, and whenever the devs fucking please, their version of stealth is just the bad guys getting the fucking drop on you randomly. Now that doesn't mean that later on hiding just out of sight or scooting past an enemy can't work. It does very well. It's just that sometimes the game wants something to happen and, well, you're usually stuck with that due to the game level and enemy design. In fact, the game really seemed dead set on presenting and pretending that there's a ton to do, but really not offering much at all. In fact, what you can't do really defines a good deal here. You can't jump, you can't lean, you can't run for longer than like 7 seconds. This last one kills me because who knows, maybe while you're in cryo sleep they fatten you up, just pumping you solid filled with congealed fats in case there's a space Donner Party moment. But really, when you find out as you continue to play that all of the moments within the game's gameplay are tied directly to the restrictions, which may be normal, but they're also logistically odd when it comes down to it, and you notice that. For example, let's say you have a door on one side of the ship and you need to get through it. You can bet the only owner of that door key traipses to the other side of the ship for the sole purpose of dropping his access card behind a fucking box of other boxes just so he could die there like some kind of old cat passing away in a refrigerator box after a long tussle. And while we do have that gameplay in other titles like this, the poor design of the ship, loading in elevators, 1-2-3 game style, and large number of level-to-level gathering puzzles makes you quickly realize that each moment you're waiting with bated breath for something unique to happen, only to ultimately be told that the way into a level 6 room is to go to level 4, find a computer, hack it by clicking one button so you can get the code so that the game can then loop back into spawning enemies that look like the aliens in the They Live movie without the originality. Now, I mean, let's be honest, your disbelief is probably already going to be stretched thin, but you're also a 400-pound tottering electrical medical cart of a main character that can't walk over a clipboard or run farther than momentum carries him for a couple seconds. At some point, you sort of begin rooting for the bad guys because really, survival of the fittest is one thing, but this would be like a fucking mercy killing. It's not all bad, though. The story is actually vaguely interesting, pieced together by the aforementioned notes and meeting up with some questionable characters on the vessel. It's just crouched in some of the most mechanical 1-2-3 gameplay ever created. And while the stealth goes a long ways at times to sort of solidify you in the atmosphere, and waiting for monsters to shamble away from you can be highly stressful, which is always fun and a sign that there is something here to enjoy. In the end, it is too little, too late, and certainly too directed. Fun factor. It's just really not scary, it's not really fun, it's not really deep, it's not really original, and it's not really fun, which I may have actually just said twice. Listen, I applaud anyone making a game, and in no way, shape, or form do I think that anyone says, you know what's scary? Boring. Let's make a perfectly boring game. That's not what happens. What I think happened is that you have a situation where the systems at play don't work so well within their environment, and that environment is also overly sterile and doesn't really communicate to the interesting parts of most people's minds. So as you guys know, I rate games on a buy, wait for sale, rent, or deep sale if it's a PC title, and never touch it again rating scale. This is actually a rent/deep sale. It is a game that I think that there is something there, but it's not 21, 24 worth of something. It's much, much less than that. There is something that's enjoyable, but it's not enjoyable enough that you can get through some of those locations and sort of interact with the gameplay that they seem to have advertised would be available within it. So anyway, that's it for me. I hope you guys liked the review. If you did, give it a thumbs up. If you didn't, give it a thumbs down. As always, if you want reviews that aren't filled with 2 minutes of sponsored bullshit, stick with ACG. Peace out and enjoy the rest of your week.